Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Waffle Flower Crafts. In today's video, I'm going to be making a masculine or even a foodie kind of themed card using some of the new sets that just came out in our release. This is one of the sets. It's called Food Adventure. It's by Mike Lowery. I really love his style. It's very unique and I love the hand-drawn look of all these images. I'll be using that set as well as this drink to that stamp set. And then I'll be finishing up the card with a couple stamps from these other stamp sets. First up was the personality, that was Big Day, and last up I'll use a sentiment from the balloon messages stamp set. So I've got my Misty here, but you do not have to use a Misty. You can use acrylic blocks to make this card, but I just thought it was easier because I'm going to stamp all my images at once. I have a panel made from Bristol paper, but it is a little bit smaller than an A2. It is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. I'm pulling off a circle from the personality stamp set and then several images now from the Food Adventure stamp set. This is actually, I'm making this card for my brother, and I'm just putting some of the things that I know he likes to eat. So this is going to be kind of a birthday card for him. The idea behind this card is creating kind of like a map or almost like a checklist or a path, however you want to think of it. It's things you can go and eat or, for your birthday or to celebrate or anything like that. That's kind of the idea behind it. So that circle is going to represent like the starting point, and the star, which is from the Big Day stamp set, is going to be the finish point. I'm going to ink these all up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I will be doing some light watercoloring on this Bristol paper, and the VersaFine is waterproof. And I will stamp this twice for two reasons. One, I didn't quite get that circle all the way stamped, and also I almost always, when I have everything loaded in my Misty already, I'll stamp it twice just to make sure it's nice and dark and the lines are very crisp. So that's all stamped. Now I'm going to heat set this so it's really dry before I move on to the next step. Again, I use the VersaFine ink, which is a pigment ink, and pigment inks stay wet longer and the likelihood of you smudging it is much greater. So I'm drying it here just to make sure I don't smudge any of that ink. So again, to continue with that kind of map look or path look, I'm going to sketch a line here. I'm going to start with a pencil, and this line is going to go from the starting point to the finish line, or to the finished star, and it's going to connect all the food images. So I'm just going to simply sketch this out. It's nothing, no straight lines here, really loose. But I'm trying to get a lot of line in this. That's my only concept, is I really want to get a lot of line in here because it's more visually interesting that way. Otherwise, it's just kind of a bunch of food pictures. So this line really connects them and really creates a lot more visual interest. And once I've got that line all sketched out the way I'd like, I'm going to take a permanent marker and I'm going to turn it into a dashed line. And you definitely want to make sure you're using something permanent. It doesn't have to be a Sharpie. This is a fine point Sharpie, but it definitely needs to be something permanent. Even though I'm not watercoloring right on top of this dotted line, if I happen to get any water drops on this, it would bleed. So just to be careful, or just to be safe, I am using this permanent marker. And the nice thing about Mike's drawings or illustrations that his quality of line is thick and thin, really that hand-drawn look. So my hashed line or my dotted line here really fits in, ties in well to these images. So it really has a cohesive look. Sometimes with other stamped images, if you do any additional details, it kind of looks a little off. So this worked really well with Mike's images. Okay, so I just erased my pencil line there, and now all my drawing is done, all my stamping is done. Now I'm ready to do my watercoloring. I'm only going to do very simple watercoloring for this card, very, very simple. I'm only going to use two colors. I'm going to start with distressed ink, which is Salty Ocean, and I'm going to smoosh it down onto that clear acetate right there. Use that kind of like my palette. I'll spritz it with a little bit of water. I've got a fine mist spray bottle just to get it liquid and moving, and then I'll start watercoloring. So I'm going to use this salty ocean here to color the whole entire background of this panel. So it will take a little bit of time, but it is very easy to do. And again, you don't have to be absolutely perfect with this. It's okay if you overlap a little bit. I'm avoiding the images as well as the pathway that I created. I'm going to leave those white. So it's not completely covered. And I'm also leaving a little border around, as you can see, around the entire panel. But it does go pretty quickly. And again, like I was saying, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. The nice looseness of these images really allow for little mistakes here and there. It's okay. It won't look bad. So I'm just going to kind of speed it up here, or jump from clip to clip, just because it's very, very simple. I'm just coloring in all the negative space pretty much with the salty ocean. So very simple to do. And sometimes I will go back over sections that I did just a little bit, because it does dry very, very fast. And I just want it to be, I'm trying to get it as smooth as possible, but again, I'm not stressing over it too much. A little bit of variation in the ink is okay. I just don't want some parts to be really stark. So wherever it dried and I have to meet up one section to the other, I might kind of blend over where the two sections meet a little bit more with a little bit more of the salty ocean. But very, very simple overall. So just finishing up here, this little bit around this faux picture, and that is done. So now I'm going to move on to coloring the images a little bit, just a little bit. I really was inspired by Mike's style. I practically took the exact colors that he used. He uses blue and like a yellow a lot, so I'm basically using these colors. I just really like his really clean and his loose but very graphic still look. So I'm coloring in, just partially coloring in these images with, this is again the spiced marmalade. Just smushed it onto that acetate and then spritzed it with water. And I'm going to end up making this spiced marmalade almost have a two-tone, so it's a little bit more watered down now. That's what I'm using, the more watered down spiced marmalade, just kind of laying down most of my color on the images that I am coloring, or the sections that I am coloring, and then I'll go back in with more spiced marmalade but less diluted with water, so it'll be more intense, more orange. And I'll just use that color to kind of add some details. And I'll do that in just a second. I'm still laying down right now the more watered down spiced marmalade, which ends up being more of a yellow. So just adding little details, to not coloring the whole image, just parts of the image. I even try to leave like a little border around the section that I'm coloring, a little white, so it's a little white border before it meets the black line of the illustration. I just think that's a nice effect. Then coloring straight up to the edge. And now I'm taking some of that darker, less diluted spiced marmalade and just adding that little details to the yellow sections that I've already painted. And this little detail adds a little bit more interest to the images, and you'll see it a little bit better here when I hold it up to the camera. But very, very simple watercoloring. The most, really the most intense part was the background. Okay, so now I'm going to adhere this to an A2 top folding panel made from 110 pound white cardstock. So it's almost like a one layer card, except for I'm just adhering this panel down to my card base. I like this as opposed to actually doing it right, doing a whole card maybe out of Bristol paper, just because you get a little bit more detail, because that panel is a little bit smaller, like I said in the beginning. So you have a little bit of like a border, and just adds a little bit more interest. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment inside. So I'm choosing a sentiment from the Balloon Messages stamp set. This says "Go to your happy place," which I think is pretty cheeky with the map with all the food. I thought that was kind of a fun sentiment to use with this. But if you want it to read more as a birthday card, you could use some other sentiments too, like possibly celebrate, it's your day. That sentiment would work for birthday or graduation or like an accomplishment of some sort. So this is all finished. The watercoloring is done. We glued the panel on and the inside is stamped with our sentiment. I really like the clean and graphic look of this card. It's very simple, but it's a lot of fun. The images are really fun. And here's the other card that I made with a different sentiment on the inside, more of a kind of a birthday card, even though both of them could be used for birthday. And again, these are great. I think this is a great design for masculine cards, which we always struggle with. If you want any more information on the products I use, please visit waffleflower.com, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thanks for watching today, guys. Have a wonderful day.